everyone is on like a starting line, and that's their life. And it starts raining. The majority of the people on the starting line look up and they start, well, complaining, whining, moaning about the weather. My life changed when I realized people are always going to complain and whine and moan. I grabbed the umbrella and I just started walking. Here I am 5 years later, and I'm turning around and I'm still seeing people on the starting line. There are still people whining and complaining about things that they can't control, like the weather. Everyone loves to complain about the weather. But wouldn't you rather just grab an umbrella or put on a winter jacket or wear a hoodie or do something and despite the weather and just move forward?
Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Vered Kogan, and I am so thrilled to introduce you to Andrew Murdoch. Andrew spent years working and serving as a scuba instructor on cruise ships, an industrial firefighter in the Canadian oil patch, freight train conductor, and Coast Guard rescue diver at a hovercraft base. He believes the normal approaches to life are outdated and the best solutions require some out-of-the-box thinking. This led Andrew to launch a full-service YouTube marketing solution for businesses built with 100% remote team members. Being a digital nomad means that no pandemic, political or civil unrest, or natural disaster will disrupt his lifestyle. And he's here today for us to explore some unconventional habits of successful entrepreneurs and the mindset shifts that inspire a less conventional path, such as the path of being a digital nomad. And I'm so excited to have this conversation. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Vered. I'm really looking forward to this chat. I somehow think that I may actually end up ruffling some feathers, but that's not always a bad thing, is it? So.
That's what it's about, right? And people can decide if they want their feathers to be ruffled or not, but at least they'll be at choice. So I'm loving it. So let's start with what is exactly a digital nomad?
Yeah, I've been a digital nomad since the end of 2018. So I feel like I have a really great grasp on this lifestyle. But I would define a digital nomad as someone who values their location independence, their freedom, freedom of choice in many different aspects of life: location, relationships, finances, health, all kinds of things. Digital nomads, for the most part, are also minimalists because we do travel a lot. So for example, I travel with two backpacks and one checked bag currently, and I can travel the world that way. Now, there are people who would be a remote worker that work from home that I wouldn't consider fall under the definition of digital nomad, but they are still a remote worker. A digital nomad is also a remote worker, but they tend to be a minimalist so that they can travel the world. And that could mean you could be a backpacker traveling around Europe, or you could be doing, which in my view is a lot more popular these days, more slow travel. That's more my style. I typically will go to a location for 3-4 months, and then I'll pack up and move to another location. But that would be my definition of a digital nomad.
Awesome. And what do you love about it?
Freedom. I can summarize it to a simple, singular word. My ability to travel the world has opened up doors, created opportunities. You and I actually met because we're both members of Genius Network. And the only reason why I'm a member of Genius Network was because I had plans to be in Arizona for 3 months. And two of my clients are Genius Network members. And independently of each other, both of them said, "Oh, you're going to be in Arizona. You have to come to the annual event." One thing led to another, and now I am a proud Genius Network member that was founded by Joe Polish. And I honestly don't know if that would have happened if I wasn't enjoying this location-independent lifestyle. And like you said in my bio, I value the ability to not have any disruptions in my life, whether it's a global pandemic or more localized epidemic, political or civil unrest. Unfortunately, that is a reality in today's world, and has been for quite some time now. People don't tend to be talking about it as much anymore, but it's still very much a reality. And ultimately, the advantages of being a digital nomad mean I have the flexibility to fold up my laptop, pack up my belongings, and relocate to another more favorable location if my current location becomes unfavorable, unsafe, unworthy for any reason whatsoever. My lifestyle will not be disrupted by those external forces. But Something that I like to quickly highlight for people as well is that becoming a digital nomad or adopting a location-independent lifestyle certainly by no means will solve all of life's problems. You're essentially just trading in one set of struggles and obstacles and challenges for a completely different set. It's all about choosing what you want to have easy in your life and choosing what you want to have hard in your life. I choose the digital nomadic lifestyle because it has far more pros than cons in my view. And I've lived as a digital nomad in Canada, the United States, Mexico, Spain, England, Scotland, and now currently coming to you from Costa Rica.
So tell us a little bit about your story. Like, how did you get to this place of living this lifestyle and doing what you do?
I'm sure you've heard the term burn the boats. I often reference that term, but in my situation, I didn't burn the boats. The boats were burned for me. So it was a little over 5 years ago, and I found myself at rock bottom. I left a toxic marriage. I never thought in a million years I was that guy to end a marriage. Never in a million years would I have guessed that. But I found myself in a very toxic relationship, and I had to end and escape that marriage. Found myself sleeping on an air mattress, swimming in debt, both mine and my ex-wife's, swimming in debt, absolutely convinced I was the world's biggest loser. And if you knew me 5 years ago, Vered, you wouldn't recognize me. I'm a completely transformed, different individual. And while I was laying on that air mattress, staring at the ceiling one evening, convinced I was the world's biggest loser, I was actually living in Vancouver, Canada at the time. And I was working remotely for the first time in my life. And I had a eureka moment. I said, why am I in one of the most expensive cities in the world? And a lot of people are shocked when I say that, but it's true. Oftentimes, most of the time, the Vancouver real estate market is the second highest real estate market in the world, right behind Hong Kong. And unfortunately, the real estate market drives the cost of living in every other aspect. So that's when I realized it's time for me to abandon conventional wisdom, abandon conventional teachings around life and business and everything in between. I decided to get rid of as much stuff as I possibly could. I donated things to charity. I sold my car, put the bare essentials in a storage locker, and I booked my first ever one-way flight. In that scenario, I actually went from Vancouver, BC, Canada to Ontario to spend the holidays with relatives because I felt it wasn't a safe move for me to be alone during the holidays because of the mental state that I was in. I had enough awareness that I knew I shouldn't be alone. So I spent the holidays in 2018 with family and relatives. And then from there, I just kept traveling one-way flight at a time. I realized that becoming a digital nomad, and at the time I was couch surfing, let's be honest, I was couch surfing, just staying with loved ones and friends. I realized that that was one of the quickest and easiest ways I could improve my financial situation. I was able to reduce my expenses to near zero levels because essentially my living expenses were now down to phone and food. And so that in part was able to help me get out of the financial mess that I was in. And we can talk about more non-traditional financial strategies later on if you like, but essentially that's what kicked things off. I didn't burn my boats. The boats were burned for me. I realized that, I mean, we've all heard the saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. And I found myself at rock bottom when I was doing all of the things that life or society taught me to do. And it wasn't until I stopped and asked myself some really difficult questions. Why is it that I'm so miserable? Why is it that I'm so broke? Why is it that I'm so sick in the head, essentially? Because I wasn't talking very kindly to myself. My mindset was broken, and I got addicted to YouTube content, thankfully. And to the day I die, I'll never forget or not feel grateful that successful people had the wherewithal to hit the record button and share their stories, share their financial strategies, share their mindset strategies like you are right now, sharing their health and fitness strategies. I was able to fix every aspect of my life because I was able to adopt the mindset of very successful people who achieved a certain level of success that I wanted to achieve. Success leaves clues. And the beautiful thing is, even though I couldn't afford their programs or their masterminds or their courses, I could still watch their free YouTube videos. And because of how YouTube is actually functions as a platform, that the creator was still being compensated because they're getting more views, more watch time, more subscribers, more engagement. And because of how YouTube's monetization program works, they were still being compensated even though I wasn't paying them. And so I was able to completely turn my life around. The danger with YouTube is it's very much passive learning. And for you listening or watching this interview right now, I caution you that you're not going to be able to change your life if you're just passively sitting back watching YouTube videos from successful people. I encourage you, I challenge you, get off your ass and actually put things into action, because nothing around this amazing world that we're all enjoying right now created because someone was passively sitting back just learning, oh, that's an interesting idea. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, he's really smart. She's really smart. No, you actually have to do something with your life to actually get things change, to build momentum and get things going the right direction. I think I went a little wider with your question there probably, but I'll pause there to see which direction you want me to focus on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit about your story. I think at some point, most of us have been in that really dark moment, in our lives, our own, on the mattress, staring up at the ceiling moment, reflecting. And for some of the people listening, they might be thinking, okay, I've had this maybe more conventional career path, life path up until this point. And, maybe it's time for me to explore something different. Maybe it is exploring being a digital nomad. Maybe it's exploring some other less conventional path, or just a different, more fun path. So, what are some of the mindset shifts that you think have really helped you along your journey to be able to feel safe enough, comfortable enough to have this very flexible type of lifestyle?
Really great question. And the first thing that comes to mind that has to be the most impactful on my life is that I adopted a stoic lifestyle. I was driving myself crazy 5 years ago because I was so disappointed in terrible things that people did and said. My life completely changed when I realized I'll never control or influence what anyone does or says. And that could be your family member, that could be your significant other, that could be a colleague, that could be an employee, that could be your boss. As soon as I made peace with the fact that I'll never be able to control what someone does or says, that's when everything shifted. That's the single greatest mindset change that I made. And I can point to that and realize that everything that I've accomplished today, and going from like rock bottom, the dark night of the soul, as Joe Polish has pointed out to us from a book that he's read 5 years ago, to completely changing my life. I could really hone in on that one thing. The analogy that I like to provide, because I'm a visual learner, and so and that's again why YouTube was such a game changer for me. It's like everyone is on like a starting line, right? Getting ready to start a race, and that's their life, okay? And it starts raining, and the majority of the people on the starting line look up and they start, well, complaining, whining, moaning about the weather. My life changed when I realized people are always going to complain and whine and moan. I grabbed the umbrella and I just started walking. I started the race. And here I am 5 years later, and I'm turning around and I'm still seeing people on the starting line. There's still people back there. There's still people whining and complaining about things that they can't control, like the weather. Everyone loves to complain about the weather. But wouldn't you rather just grab an umbrella or put on a winter jacket or wear a hoodie or do something, and despite the weather, and just move forward? When I made that mindset shift, everything else fell into place. I stopped complaining about being broke and I found solutions. I stopped complaining about my health and fitness and I found solutions. And sometimes I had to go against the grains. People will absolutely influence your way of observing the world. Everyone has a filter, and your filter is constantly being influenced by the people you do business with, your family members, your friends, the people you surround. It's the same old thing that everyone knows to be true. You're the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. The problem is most people don't actually change the 5 people they spend most of their time with.
For those individuals that are thinking, okay, I get it. I need to release the attachment to being able to control what other people may think and do. What was it that created the ability for you to shift your mindset?
My first part of this answer is going to be telling you, the viewer or listener, to go watch Vered's other interview with Sam Horn, because Sam Horn is an expert at what language a person should use. So go click the card at the top of the screen, or click on the link in the description below to get access to that video following this interview, if this interview is giving you value. Okay. So that's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer is I found myself in unbelievable pain. And I think it's Tony Robbins that says, and probably it doesn't originate with Tony Robbins, but people are much more likely to take action to avoid pain than towards pleasure. It's not until we are put into a situation, a scenario that we never would have seen ourselves in, so in my bio, you shared that I have a background in emergency services. I'm a former firefighter, former Coast Guard rescue diver. The truth is, you don't know how you're going to behave in an emergency situation until you're put into an emergency situation. You're either going to fight, freeze, or flee. Those are the only 3 really reactions that a human being will experience. You're gonna get aggressive, and you're gonna fight against the emergency situation. You're gonna run. You're gonna get the hell out of that emergency situation, or you're gonna freeze. The reason why I'm tying it back to first response, most people are not first responders, but if they're going through a crisis moment like I did with my divorce, my separation, that is an emergency situation for me, not for anybody else, but it was an emergency situation for me and my ex-wife. We worked on the marriage. We sought out help. We got counseling. In one of those consultations that we had with the individual that was counseling us, stopped the conversation, looked at my ex-wife and said, "Your marriage is in crisis and your husband has checked out." There were no changes made for 2 or 3 months after that conversation, and then I ended the marriage. When I ended the marriage, she was surprised. But I don't understand why she was surprised when the gentleman counseling us told her point blank, "Your marriage is in crisis, your husband is checked out." Sometimes people don't pay attention even when something is staring them in the face. We can't see something right in front of us. That extremely painful moment forced me to reevaluate everything about my life, because I was doing everything society told me I should do. The biggest, most impactful questions I've ever asked myself is putting the blame where it deserved to be, and it was on me. It wasn't my fault, but it was my responsibility to do something about it. But when you're pushed to the point of no return, you find yourself developing courage to do things you never thought possible before. So to answer your question, I was pushed to that point of pain, and I had to pack up my belongings, left, slept on an air mattress for 6 weeks, totally a changed person.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that concept of a crisis, a major disruption or crisis or point of no return at times to the extreme, it really does ignite our evolution. I'm a big believer that these things happen in our life in order to nudge us, or sometimes, hit us over the head, to become even more clear about what is most important to us, honoring what is most important to us, and of course, the courage and motivation to take those actions, to shift our life, to take better care of ourselves, and so on. And so when we think about, the concept of abandoning, or at least, lessening more conventional lifestyles, more conventional career paths, it's important to bring to mind the possibility that if we are faced with sometimes business challenges, career challenges, maybe a loss of a job, maybe in a time of retirement, which can also be a big disruption for many people. That might be a time to reconsider our beliefs about what we're capable of, what's possible for us, and really what it is that we truly want. And once we pause to ask those questions and we're willing to have the courage to be real with ourselves, then we're at choice. Do I want to pursue that less conventional path? And of course, for most people, there is going to be some form of resistance. It might be financial things that they need to take care of. It might be family that they that might need to make some adjustments as well while they're making adjustments. There could be all kinds of resistance. So what are some of the steps that people can take who are listening to us today, who are either at a point of crisis or want to prevent crisis by exploring some less conventional paths? What are some steps that they can take?
Something that I'm constantly reminded of is fighting what's called arrival syndrome. I'm constantly being reminded of fighting arrival syndrome. The most dangerous words in the English language are "I know that." As soon as someone says those three words, they've shut their brains off to learning something new. My entire life's trajectory changed when I had the courage to stop and ask myself those tough questions. If this is what I believe to be true is not actually true, what is true? And that's how I ended up being where I am today, because I had the courage to stop and say, wait a second, the conventional wisdom that is applicable in wealth creation, professional career advancement, personal relationships, health and fitness, you name the topic. If I'm not getting the results, and I've been trying conventional wisdom for the last 10, 15 years, then maybe what I believe to be true is actually not true. What's the most dangerous thing that anyone can experience is something that they believe to be true that just isn't so. I truly believe in that, because when success leaves clues, when the tiny percentage of people out there achieve their fitness goals, their financial goals, their professional goals, but oftentimes when you really drill into what they're doing, they're not following conventional wisdom. They're not following the crowd. They're not following the herd. So then why is it that when you're talking to your mom and you're doing the opposite of what her generation did, and now it might lead into arguments and fighting, because what used to work in her generation doesn't work anymore. And I'm sorry, Mom, it doesn't work anymore. I'm doing it this way because, pensions aren't a thing anymore, or whatever the situation might be. So the first step is having the courage to stop and question that your beliefs are actually completely false, that your beliefs about topic ABC are completely false and wrong. And once you're willing to ask yourself that question, now you got to go into research mode, right? But step one is having the confidence to actually question that your beliefs are completely false. And if you're not getting the results or the outcomes that you're after, then guess what? Your beliefs are probably false, or maybe they're just false for you. That doesn't necessarily be false for everyone, but maybe they're false for you, right? Maybe conventional wisdom isn't going to be applicable for you because you've tried it for 10, 15 years and you're not getting anywhere. It's like you're on that hamster wheel and you're not making any progress. Step two, I go into research mode. I obsess over a topic. I find all the experts. I join the masterminds. I join the communities. I read the books. I listen to the podcasts. I watch the YouTube videos. And I very rarely will hone in on one expert, because I understand that everyone's got pros and cons. I'll probably find like 5 different experts on the topic, and I'll pick and choose bits and pieces from each expert, and I'll apply what works for me and discard the rest. Success leaves clues, and you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. There's a lot of free information. Is free these days. Information is never the problem. You'll be able to go to YouTube and do a search, and you'll find tons and tons of information that you're looking for. But there may be occasions where you're going to want to go deeper in a cultivated way, which means maybe getting an online course, or if you have the budget, joining someone's mastermind, joining someone's network. Like you and I met in Genius Network, and now we have access to really exceptional people that are doing incredible things in the world, adding more value and impacting more lives in the world, because that's the level that they're playing at now, right? But those are the steps that I would advise anyone to make. But the first most critical spark that will ignite the flame that will lead you going the rest of the way would be questioning your belief system.
And I appreciate that because I think it really does come down to the power of our beliefs. Ultimately, they're a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I'm considering, a less conventional path, and I tell myself, I want more, let's say, freedom. I want more joy or more adventure in my life, something like that. And if I have any buts at the end of that sentence, right? Like I want more freedom, but, right? Or I can't do that because typically what completes that phrase is a belief. And the beliefs that create pain for us are typically not actually true. They're not, maybe they were true at some point, or maybe they're still true for somebody else. But as you said, they're usually not true anymore for us, which is why we're feeling that pain. And it does take some courage to face our beliefs. And sometimes the beliefs could be because I don't believe that I'm worthy enough, or I just don't know how, which then leads to kind of step two, which is research, or I don't know the first step. Or it might be, I'm afraid about my financial future. I'm worried about my relationships, or I fear, I fear I may fail. I fear I may succeed if I do. And then whatever the belief might be, oftentimes it is rooted in fear. And our body, of course, wants to protect us, to keep us safe. And so when our unconscious mind's highest job is to run and protect our body, essentially to keep us alive, we can see why many people would still be at the starting point of that, marathon or run that you talked about earlier, right? That they may not go ahead and take the first step or continue after the first step because the body may not feel safe. And so that's why it comes to step two, which is to do the research. Once we know what some of our limiting beliefs might be, to say, well, how true is this? That I may not be able to have the financial security that I desire, or financial independence, or that it might be hard, or that I might fail. How true is it? And that's where talking to people, listening to podcasts such as this, and learning from others' experience can really help, because there are things that we can do to lessen risks, and to increase the likelihood that we will experience what we want to experience. And at the same time, knowing, again, crisis ignites evolution. So when we do face a setback, which we will, no matter what path, conventional or otherwise, we take, at that point, to be able to pause, and I call it play the mindset game, right? To really kind of pause, label what it is that we're feeling, right? I'm feeling worried, I feel doubt, I feel fear, I feel sad, I feel whatever it is that I feel. And then to be able to activate our heart, and really shift our perception about the situation, and be able to see the truth, right? See beyond the cloud or the illusion of the belief that we used to be operating under, and make usually better decisions.
I love that. I'd love to build on that with two things. You and I both know Evan Carmichael, and Evan has a fantastic book called Built to Serve that I've read twice, actually. I do believe that when someone is experiencing a crisis, one of the quickest and easiest ways to get yourself into a better momentum is to shifting perspective and finding people or ways you can give back, serving to someone who is, because no matter how bad your situation is, I promise you, you have it better than someone else. As long as you have a roof over your head and food in your belly, you're probably better off than someone else. Find ways to give back. Maybe go contribute to a soup kitchen or a shelter of some kind. Like, really, I love his book, Built to Serve, and that's why I wanted to quickly highlight that. And then the other thing really quickly is going back to what I said earlier, the most dangerous words in the English language are "I know that." Something that I learned from a YouTube channel back when I was in my rock bottom 5 years ago is there are 3 levels of mastery. The lowest bottom level of mastery, knowing. Knowing, doing, living. That's why the most dangerous words are "I know that," because if you're reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, and they're talking about ways to improve your relationship, they're talking about ways to improve your finances, they're talking about ways for you to improve your health and fitness, and you catch yourself thinking, yeah, I know that already. My immediate response is, yeah, but are you doing it? Because knowing it is the bottom. You're literally scraping the bottom if you know it. Are you doing it? And then, great, oh, you are doing it. Are you living it? Is it part of your ethos? Is it something that you get, like, what's the old saying? Another old saying is, A professional will practice until they can't get it wrong. An amateur practices until they get it right. And that to me just boils it right down. And I love knowing, doing, living. Those are the three levels of mastery. And I'm focused on living in the most important pillars of my life: health, wealth, finances, relationships. That is what I'm focused on. And that's the only reason why I was able to get my ass out of rock bottom.
And sometimes it really is just taking that first step, from the start line, so to speak, seeing that, what, we've survived. It might not have been easy, but, we're still here, and we learn some more, and then we continue to pivot and learn and grow with every step. And I think that what's important here on this topic of, again, these, abandoning or again, kind of moving away from conventional thinking patterns, conventional living patterns, it is that it really starts with, what do I truly desire? Because oftentimes the beliefs that we have about what we want are not actually accurate. We've just told ourselves that enough times, right? Like, I should be a this, I should be a that. When really, when we pause and say, is that really what I want? Am I truly happy doing what I'm doing? And it really does take some patience and compassion for us to give to ourselves, to be able to pause and ask those questions, which we may have never questioned before, because there is a potential cost to the answer, right? Once it comes, because once we're conscious of it, then we're at choice. And it's like, there's a bigger gap. If I know something and I'm not moving toward it, that's not comfortable. That can lead to discomfort or even anxiety. So sometimes people are like, okay, let me live this life of never really questioning, so that I never need to fully awaken, right? If I don't know what I'm awakening to, I can just kind of stay asleep and live a happy, what some people might call mediocre life, although it can be very fulfilling, but might not be their highest and fullest potential. So we've got some steps here, right? There is number one, about kind of questioning what we consider to be true, right? Questioning our beliefs, reaching out people in other communities, people who've done what we want to do successfully in a consistent way, modeling them, learning from them, giving back to others. As you said, our friend Evan, kind of talks about around, really giving from our heart, because that too allows us to have even more empathy, even more compassion. And when we have that for others, we tend to have that for ourselves as well. And we have more meaning, more fulfillment. And of course, taking the actions. It's so, so, so important. Even if it's little baby steps, right? Even just listening to this podcast conversation, pausing to write out, okay, I want this, whatever the fill in the blank this is for the listener or viewer, right? I want this, but, and just, filling out a page with buts, or I can't have this, or I can't do this because, and just filling out a page of all of the becauses, and just looking and saying, how true is this? And how true is that? And was there a time when it wasn't true? Where did I even, adopt this thought in the first place, right? Where did it come from? And when we can do that, we can begin to realize, maybe it would be safe to pursue something different. Maybe life is not going to, explode, so to speak, if we take that risk.
So true. I love Alex Hormozi's definition of learning. He defines learning as changed behavior. So you might believe that you learned an important life lesson, but if I use the word universe, insert whatever word you prefer, but if the universe keeps sending you painful reminders about ABC, well, then you probably didn't learn, because you haven't changed your behavior. And that comes back to the whole passive learning. And you just quickly mentioned it again. I don't encourage you watching this YouTube video or listening to this podcast right now. Don't just jump onto the next episode right away without actually, if you are committed to making better decisions and truly learning to improve your lifestyle in any capacity, any pillar, then you really need to step back and ask yourself, okay, have I actually taken action? Am I doing ABC? Am I living ABC? And I think that's the danger that most people get into content consumption. Nothing against content consumption. I built a career around that, but it's simply the spark that should lead to the next step. Absolutely.
So one last question here, and it's specifically regarding kind of how we started around the lifestyle of being a digital nomad. What are some, I mean, I know you talked about some of the benefits, including freedom and so on. What are some of the things that people should be conscious of should they choose to pursue that or explore that? What might be some of the obstacles or downsides, cons, so to speak, with that potential lifestyle?
Yeah, really great question, because it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There's some downsides to being a digital nomad. I mean, you certainly want to pay some attention to the safety of the areas that you're going to be traveling to. I don't want to spend too much time on this. There are certainly parts of the world that I would avoid. But having said that, I've also been warned about certain parts of right here in Costa Rica. I was told that Limon, which is on the Caribbean side, is a really dangerous place. But I took my girlfriend there for a holiday last December, and we had a wonderful time and didn't have any problems whatsoever. So there might be just a specific community or section that you want to avoid. A lot of people, when I say, I'm in Costa Rica, some people may jump to conclusions and say, "Oh, like, are you okay? Is it?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I'm okay." But I'm from Vancouver, and a lot of people consider Canada to be one of the safest countries out there. But let me tell you, there are parts of Vancouver I would not walk at night by myself. Hastings Street. So there, that's something to keep mindful of. Some people do have struggles around loneliness. I've never felt loneliness as a digital nomad. I'm actually a huge introvert, so I enjoy my personal quiet time. I like to read and watch movies in my relaxation time. But let's be honest, I'm a busy entrepreneur. I'm working 7 days a week most days, just because that's the state of the growth that I'm in right now, and I love what I do. But some digital nomads have reported having a hard time connecting. I've never had that problem because there are virtual forums, virtual Facebook groups, virtual communities and masterminds that I'm a part of. That I'm active in on a regular basis. I'm obviously an active member of Genius Network as well. There are virtual calls to connect with people in a virtual way that I don't feel lonely. And then wherever I'm physically located, I can head down to the beach and bump into some really amazing people. Actually, random story, I bumped into Eric's dad a couple of weeks ago. And if you don't know who Eric is, huge YouTuber. And he was, his dad, I didn't know who he was at the time, but his dad was asking me, "Oh, so what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I have a YouTube marketing business. We help professionals and businesses grow their YouTube channels." And he goes, "Oh yeah, my son's a YouTuber." And I didn't think anything of it. A lot of people are YouTubers, right? And then the conversation kept going, and he said his son was Eric. I'm like, "Wait a second, 15 million subscribers, Eric? He's like, "Yeah, that's my son." I'm like, "Oh, crazy, small world." I love the flexibility. Again, I'm going to a positive, and you asked about the negatives, but I love the flexibility to jump on a flight and attend a conference, even though I'm a super introvert. I still see the value of being physically in the room and making connections and shaking hands. But a digital nomad will have that level of flexibility that a location-dependent person may not. If your revenue, your income is tied to a specific building, a specific city, province, state, country, what have you, you're going to have less flexibility than a digital nomad, someone who's location independent. My income is not tied to a geographic region. My income is tied to my ability to access the internet. And thankfully, accessing the internet is easier now than it's ever been, and will continue to be, especially with things like Starlink and whatnot. But again, you asked about cons. That is a con. What if I'm in the middle of an important podcast like I am right now, and if I were to lose power or internet, that would prevent my ability to add value to my business and my clients. Cons, some people will struggle around the healthcare side of things. I never have. I'm typically in countries where healthcare is superb, and I mean that superb, fantastic. I've witnessed and observed some amazing healthcare that trumps what I have observed in Canada. And yes, I'm definitely saying the Costa Rican healthcare system is better than Canada's, and I'm probably ruffling some feathers saying that, but sorry, I've seen it with my own eyes. And you're asking me about cons, and I'm giving you more positives. That's like for me, there are more pros than disadvantages. Oh, receiving mail. Receiving mail. Receiving mail is a big con. For instance, I am in a big, beautiful house right now in a beautiful part of Costa Rica. There is no address for this house. Costa Rica has a very different system, different culture. Addresses are not really a thing here. So receiving mail can be a pain, but as long as you can get around like nitpicky things like that, then you're probably well suited to be a digital nomad.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit of that, because I imagine some of the people listening might be curious about what that might be like. So, Andrew, as we kind of complete here, I'd love to ask you one more question, because you've lived through a lot of experiences, highs and lows, as you've shared, and clearly you've learned some important life lessons, which I'm so grateful you're sharing with our audience. What advice would you give at the 10-year-old you? So if you rewind the clock back to 10-year-old Andrew and you sat down with him, what advice would you give him?
Oh, there's so many things. Your mess is your message. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. I wish I learned those lessons at an earlier age. So if I could talk to my 10-year-old self, I would get down on my knee and I would say, sometimes when the universe is throwing you a really painful situation, you need to go through this to achieve the level of growth that is demanded of you. You cannot coast through life, and you need to experience some hardship in order for you to really get to as close to absolute truth. No one will ever achieve absolute truth, but you'll need to experience pain and hardship in order for you to make the impact on the world that you want to make. That is something I would have to say to my younger self, because 10-year-old Andrew had no idea the pardon the language, the storm that he was going into, because his parents were about to separate, and then later on in adulthood, I definitely made a lot of mistakes, and I had to own up to those mistakes. And the quicker I realized that I'm the creator of my lifestyle, and to get away from the blame game. Man, when I was younger, I would blame other people all the time, and it's really a terrible mindset. So I would tell young Andrew to be more patient and compassionate with others, and that they're just doing the best that they can. And even if they did wrong you, they did the best that they can. Take these painful experiences, learn from them, and become better, do better, live better.
Very well said. It's very wise advice for all of us, I believe. So thank you. Thank you. With all my love, thank you, Andrew. How can people learn more about you, about the incredible new community that I know you're building for professionals and business owners who are using YouTube to kind of grow and expand their businesses? How can people find more information about all of that?
Yeah, we're getting ready to launch a free community, free training, free resources at yt4business.com for professionals and business owners who want to use YouTube to grow their business. And for people who want to directly connect with me, I would say LinkedIn is probably the best way. I find that it's if YouTube is my number one favorite platform, LinkedIn would be my number two, simply because I feel like a lot less shenanigans go on LinkedIn. Someone typically uses the real name and the real headshot, whereas some of these other platforms, not necessarily the case. Not a fan of interacting with a picture of a cat. So, LinkedIn would probably be the best bet, yeah. And if you watching this interview, listening to this interview right now, are looking for ways to help Vered, you need to watch, like, subscribe, comment on these videos, share these interviews with others, because Vered puts a lot of time, money, and effort and energy into creating content. If you have spent any amount of time or money creating content, you know yourself how difficult this is. This takes time and resources, right? So you can give back simply by watching more of Vered's YouTube videos and sharing them with other people, because she interviews incredible people, way smarter, more successful people than me are on her YouTube channel. So watch her content, and that's exactly how you can give back.
Thank you again, Andrew. Really awesome conversation. So grateful that we went there. And I think, at a minimum, everybody listening is probably going to be just questioning or being curious about their life and what, if anything, they wish to change. And they'll have some strategies for how to go about starting their own journey. So thank you.